Today on Trucks, it may not look like much now, but this old Bronco is the start of Project Crazy Horse, and Stacey's got a mess on his hands as he begins throwing out the bad and bolting on the good. Then we'll take a look at a cool 48 Chevy street truck that's on loan from Stacey's bank officer. That's all today on Trucks.
Welcome to Trucks. I hope you're ready for this week's show because today I'm going to start a new build-up on this really sorry 66 Ford Bronco. Now the direction behind this build-up is number one, to pay tribute to the legendary Big Ole Bronco that absolutely dominated Baja racing in the 70s, with none other than Parnelli Jones behind the wheel and Bill Strope sitting beside him trying to hold everything together. Number two, it needs to be a state-of-the-art trail rig, something that you can crawl rocks and go through mud with the best of them. Also needs to be street legal. Now, I know you're probably thinking, wait a minute, you're going to do all that with this piece of junk? You're crazy. Can't be done. You've gone too far. Well, I figured you'd probably say that. So that's why I'm calling this project Crazy Horse. That and it's going to be really crazy when I get done with it. Today's project deals with one of the most difficult, messy, pain-in-the-butt projects you can possibly do, and that is replacing rusty floor pans. Now, it doesn't matter if you're into cars, trucks, whatever. If you're a how-to guy, you are eventually going to buy a project that's got some rust in the floors. So you either need to know how to do this yourself or take it to somebody to do it for you. But either way, you really need to know what types of tools and techniques are involved. And that is what I'm going to show you. The first thing you need to do is make sure you've got a tetanus shot. Then you need to come in, look the vehicle over, and assess the damage so you know what kind of replacement panels you're going to have. Now to do that, you need to completely gut the interior. Get rid of anything that might be bolted to the floor, like the seats, top, roll bar, things like that. Here you go, Barry. Watch those edges. All right. Now, here's something that you're not going to see on truck gear. The legendary PVC roll bar. I think this company went out of business. Here it comes, Barry, look out! Okay, with everything apart, you can kind of see what we're going to have to replace. Now, obviously, these floor pans are shot. And also, notice that the cancer goes all the way up here into this toe board. You're going to have to replace all that. Now the cross members, those are pretty solid. This one back here looks good, but here in the very back, that one's shot. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of them just to be safe. Now here's a surprise. Notice our striker panel is completely rusted through, so we're going to have to replace that whole piece. Now the rocker may seem nice here, but it's shot, so we'll need to replace that too. As you can see, we need a lot of stuff. So for floor pans, we went to a place called Wild Horses and got their complete 5-piece floor pan kit. Now these are stamped and formed just like the original pieces, down to the beads in the floor, the hump for the transmission, everything. When you put these in, it'll look just like that Bronco came from the factory. And that is one of the good things about a Bronco. You can buy these preformed panels so you don't have to make them yourself. Now, if you don't need all 5 pieces, you can buy each piece separately. For cross members, rocker panels, and door striker panels, we went to a place called Jeff's Bronco Graveyard. Got these heavy gauge direct replacements that pop right in place of the original pieces once we get them out. Now, you can see they're stamped and formed just like the original parts. Now, Jeff's Bronco Graveyard is a unique place. They not only have top quality new stuff, but they also deal in hard to find used stuff like all metal hoods with no rust and door assemblies, both of which we got just in case we need them. Okay, it's finally time to start cutting, right? No, there's still some prep work that you have to do in here. Now, since I'm going to be cutting out so much of this floor, you need to stress up the body to keep it from flexing and bending and getting out of alignment on you, because if that happens, it's almost impossible to get it all straight again. So the first thing I'm going to do is weld in a support from fender to fender to keep those from moving when I cut out those striker panels. Then we'll run a support down across the door openings. This will support the door, keep it from flexing in on us when we take out the rockers. Okay, it's finally time to start cutting things out. The question is, where the heck do you start? Well, you start at the lowest foundational support. In other words, the floor pan is supported by the cross member, and that's supported by the rocker panel. And that's kind of the beginning of the chain, so that is where we'll start. To get that off, take a drill bit or a spot weld cutter and drill out each one of these spot welds. That takes care of the rocker panel. Now this is a nice surprise. Our inner rocker is really solid, so we're not going to have to replace that. Also, to take out your striker panel, do that the same way, drill your spot welds, and the new pieces just plop right in. Now, I'm going to take a break, change my shirt, and I told you this was a messy project. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Next, Stacey strikes up the band to install new striker panels. Then he rocks on the new rockers. And later, we'll blow you away with truck gears.
Welcome back to the shop. I'm right in the middle of dealing with some really nasty, rusty floor pans on Project Crazy Horse. Now, before the break, I took care of the rockers and the striker panels, but before I put the new ones in, well, I'm going to deal with some problems that you might run into. Namely, what do you do if you can't get the panels out? Now, if you'll remember, on the rockers, we drilled the spot welds, and they pretty much just fell right out. Now, I'll tell you something right now. Those strikers are not going to come out that easy. So what do? Well, you're going to have to cut them out. And as you can see, they come out about an inch at a time, screaming and kicking all the way. Now, the tools that you're going to need to do that is everything from an air nibbler to a sawzall to a cutoff tool, hammer and chisel, and even some snips, all of which you need to have in your arsenal before you ever try this kind of project. Now we're ready to put the new panel in, but before you do, come in here with a grinder, hit this edge, hit all these edges where you're going to be welding so you have some nice clean metal to weld to. Now also notice I've got some paint in here, but it's not just any kind of paint. It's called Miracle Paint from Bill Hirsch Automotive. You can literally paint this stuff right over rust and it'll seal it up and keep it from rusting. Now, I've used that stuff for years and it really works. Now also notice that we've got a rusty panel here. We need to build a patch panel for it, but we don't need to do that yet. We'll do that at the end of the project. All right, slide the panel into place and position it. Now some clamps and a body hammer are perfect for getting it just right. Make sure you're checking it with your door so you know it fits. That's right on. When you have it perfect, tack weld it in place, double check it with your door, and then finish welding it in. Now we're ready for the rocker, and it should pretty much just slide into place. Be prepared though to do a little bit of trimming with the snips to get it to fit just perfect. Now, you're going to want to spend some time here because this is what makes or breaks the look of this truck. Rocker needs to line up with the fender and it also needs to work with the door right. So spend some time here. Now, once you have it right, go ahead and clamp it in place and weld it. Okay, now, finally, we are ready to tackle these old floor pans. This is where you're going to be really glad you got that tetanus shot. Now, getting the old pans off of the cross members can be a little tough because all these spot welds have got to come out just like with the rocker. But an easy way to do it is to cut the floor into sections using the outside of the cross members as a guide. Then just come in here with a chisel and get this old junk off the top. Now, you can use a sawzall to do that, or a cutoff tool. I definitely prefer the sawzall because it's a lot quicker, doesn't make near as big a mess. But before you do any cutting, you need to come under here and make sure you know what's underneath before you unleash that Sawzall, because it'll cut anything, including your frame. Also, make sure you don't cut away more than you know the new pans will cover, or you're going to have to go in and patch that later on. Well, that takes care of cutting out the old floors and lays to rest yet another shirt. That's 2 if you're counting. So we're going to take a break. But after that, I'm going to put some floor pans in this sucker. Stay with us.
Next, Stacey's floor show is red hot as he's putting in the new metal. Stay tuned. Just can't get enough of trucks? Check us out online at truckstv.com.
Welcome back. Now, if you're just joining us, you're way too clean, because we're right in the middle of replacing some rusty floors in Project Crazy Horse. Now, we've already got the rockers and the striker panels in, got the old metal cut out. Now it's time to check out the cross members, because if those are bad, they got to go. Now, you can see we actually lucked out really well, because these are in great shape, except for a little bit of surface rust. So, we're going to take some clamps, straighten up the ears, so the new floors have a nice flat place to mount to. Then we'll hit them with some Miracle Paint. This rear one, we'll just replace that. All right, now take a grinder and smooth off these cross member ears so you have really nice metal to weld to. Then set in your center pan. Now you should expect to do a little bit of tweaking and twisting on this to make sure it fits just right, but it should pretty much lay right in there. Now once you're happy with the fit, go ahead and punch some holes for your spot welds. Now it is very important that these pans fit flush down on the cross members, not only for strength, but also nothing looks more amateurish than a big old gap between a floor pan and the cross member. Remember, if you take your time and do this right, this will look just like a factory install. Once your main pan is tacked into place, go ahead and slide in this rear floor section and check the fit. Now, keep in mind, you may have to do a little bit of trimming to get it just right. And once you're happy with it, go ahead and tack it in place along with this rear floor section. That is fitting great. The last thing we're going to deal with are the toe boards. Now these are cut just like the original pieces, and that is really nice because notice you've got a seam running up the side, along the top, down this other side. Now all we have to do is cut down that line and this new piece will weld right in there. Now, notice here we've got a problem. We've got a rust hole in this transmission hump and we don't have a patch panel to fix that. So, we're going to have to custom make that. Well, now you can see what kind of job it is to replace floors and rockers. I went through 3 shirts, put another couple holes in my pants, ended up with some more cuts on my arms, and it completely pegs out our difficulty meter. Now, you might be wondering, if it's that difficult, why the heck would I want to do it? It's a good question. The reason is, with all the parts that I put on this thing today, from Jeff's Bronco Graveyard and Wild Horses, I got about $700 in this thing. Now, I still have some spot welding to do, and a little bit of fabrication, but when I'm done, I'm still going to have $700 in it. Now, if you were to pay somebody to do this kind of job, provided you could find somebody to do it right, you'd pay upwards of $5 grand. Now, you just sit there and think about that for a minute. We'll be back.
After the break, it's no repo we'll show, it's a banker's cool ride. So stay right there and we'll take you inside. And now truck gear, parts, tools, and equipment for pickups and sport utilities.
When it comes to bolting on some serious, streetable horsepower, well, putting on a supercharger is one of the best ways to do that. And nothing screams blower like Wyand's awesome 671 street supercharger. Now this thing will give you up to 50% more power And of course, it's got the look that, shoot, legends were made of this. But there's a lot more to it than that. The kit comes with a fully polished 671 blower, intake manifold, upper and lower drive pulleys, a 3-inch Gilmer belt, of course pulleys for your V-belts, and all the hardware and brackets that you'll need to actually bolt this thing on and go, provided the rest of your engine's up to the task. Now, you would think that something as legendary as a 671, well, YN's kit's probably pretty expensive, right? Say around $5 grand? Nope. $2,500. Now, at a price like that, the only choice is whether to tuck it up under the hood or to let it stick out through. I know what I'd do. Of all the performance aftermarket products available for your truck, headers have been the most loved and hated all at the same time. Because on one hand, you get great flow and performance. On the other, they're notorious for blowing gaskets and leaking, especially down at the collector where you'll warp that and they'll just leak forever. Well, the guys at R.S. Parker Company decided to fix that for good with a product called the Header Hush. Now this thing bolts right onto the collector and keeps the flange from warping, which of course keeps the gasket from blowing. Now, installation of the Header Hush is as easy as bolting it on when you replace the gasket. The price is right too. $50 will take care of both headers. When you're working on your truck project, you're going to find that you need some abrasives, whether it's cleaning something up or grinding something down. And you probably know that Standard Abrasives makes a whole line of products just for those needs. But what you probably don't know is that they also make kits specifically for porting and polishing heads, prepping and cleaning an engine block, and they've got this kit with these little small abrasive rolls. That's for those certain projects where you need that special roll that you just can't find down at your local store. Now you know who makes them, Standard Abrasives. Question: when I say the word banker, what image pops into your mind? Probably an uptight guy in a suit and tie, driving around in a Mercedes or a Lexus or a BMW. Matter of fact, the last thing you'd probably ever associate with a banker is a really slick 48 Chevy pickup. Unless, of course, you're Larry Smith, who's always preferred to spend his money on the finer things in life, like a really slick 48 Chevy pickup. This is his. Let's check it out. The first thing that really grabs you about Larry's truck is the vibrant purple paint that covers what at first glance might seem to be a stock body, until you take a closer look. To make things just smooth as glass, a V-butt windshield replaces the old stock center strip and flows really nicely with the one-piece side glass. The cowl vent, the fresh air door, and the heater louvers were all shaved off the cowl to make it smooth and clean, and all the trim was also removed from the hood. But that's not all. The original two-piece hood was welded together to get rid of any unsightly bumps, bulges, or seams. The original grille is fully restored, and it's the perfect centerpiece to that classic front end. But it's even further enhanced by the fact that a stock-looking bumper was tucked 4 inches closer to the body, and the gaps filled with a handmade filler panel. Awesome. Now, for those times where you need to break away from rush hour traffic and just drive down the road, well, under the hood thumps a strong, nicely detailed 350 Chevy, and that's nestled into an extremely clean, smooth engine bay. I'd never be ashamed to raise this hood. Flowing down the sides, the running boards are completely smooth, and the stock door handles are probably the first thing shaved off this truck. The interior would make any Mercedes green with envy, with leather upholstery starting up in the headliner, flowing down into the door panels, and plush leather buckets supplying the seating and rounding out the package. Modern gauges, air conditioning, state-of-the-art stereo system all supply any of the modern conveniences that, heck, any banker would want. The stance on this truck is right on the money, and it got that way with an '86 Monte Carlo donating the front subframe and a Camaro topping up the rear end. Out back is a completely new bed with finished oak and stainless steel strips making up the bed floor. That's followed by a smooth tailgate and a custom-made roll pan to really finish out the rear. And that cleans up an area that's usually pretty rough on these old trucks. Well, now, let's see. In a humble 48 Chevy pickup, we have performance and power, handling, awesome styling, and all the modern comforts. And the best thing is, you can buy a truck like this for a heck of a lot cheaper than you'll ever pay for a new Mercedes or Lexus or BMW, which means you not only have something to drive to the bank, you'll also have something to put in the bank when you get there. And that sounds like a good investment to me. That's going to wrap it up for today. Here's a look at next week's show.
Next week on Trucks, we're turning up the heat on Project Crazy Horse as Stacey adds a new rear suspension, wheels, and tires. And then he's pulling off the body and rolling out the chassis to get to work on replacing the front. And finally, we'll take an up-close and personal look at the World of Championship rock crawler John Curry's fire ant. That's all next week on Trucks. For a VHS copy of today's show, call toll-free 1-877-853-7260. Show videos are just $12.95 plus shipping and handling. Trucks is an RTM production.